Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 365 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. It's been a busy week removing treatments from all of our hives now that we've reached the end of that particular phase of the season, and I was delighted to see so many really strong colonies and nucs. It appears it was just in time as we feel the full force of Storm Amy. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. This week's podcast is brought to you, in part, by Hive Multi-Guard. So,
when you need a little peace of mind that your bees are safe from dangers of all kind, pesticides, hornets, wasps and mice are no match for Hive 5. The Hive 5 Multi-Guard is the best one in town. Keeps your bees safe all year round. The ultimate solution has been found. It's Hive 5.
The Hive 5 Multi-Guard fits nearly all beehives and makes beekeeping much easier. Hive 5.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to this week's podcast. And as I write, the rain is lashing down against the office window, and it feels like it's getting windier too. I'm so glad we got out this week and not only removed the treatment strips, on time as it happens, but also, and as a happy coincidence, took the time to tighten down all of the straps and secure the hives in place. The weather has taken a sharp turn. Storm Amy is on our doorstep, and with it heavy rain and high winds. Yet, after this weekend, the daytime temperatures look set to skyrocket again, up to around 20 degrees Celsius. I do think that's the peak of it though. Now that we're into October and the position of the sun is dropping forever lower in the sky, daytime temperatures can't possibly stay high for much longer. Or can they? Something I will do over the weekend is have a quick drive around the apiaries just to check on fallen trees and branches. I have a couple of gnarly oak trees quite close to some of the hives at one apiary, so I just want to make sure that everything is okay and colonies are safe and secure. And I would suggest if you have any colonies that are near older trees, do pop out and take a look at them. It has been noticeably darker in the mornings for sure. I wonder if you're finding that. I'm still waking early, 4 a.m. today. It's just excitement though, that and lots of plans bouncing around in my head for the coming inactive apiary period. Lots of exciting stuff, I have to say, and I do promise you'll be the first to hear about it as soon as I have my thoughts lined up enough to make some sense. Back at the apiaries, I'm just very glad we removed the strips this week, those treatment strips. It was time for most of them to come out, and with any treatment that you're using, it's really important to follow the guidelines and instructions for use, particularly the effective treatment period. Apivar is a 10-week treatment period if there is a lot of brood present, but as little as 6 weeks if there's no brood present, and we had somewhere in between. Our colonies have some brood, but it's falling off rapidly now, so I've gone with an 8-week removal period. The nucs had Apistan used on them. Again, this is purely because it's what I had available back at the office. Apistan has a treatment period of 6 to 8 weeks, and we've hit the full 8-week period for these treatments. The nucleus colonies currently are in very good condition. I'm so pleased, and hopefully, having had the Varroa treatments in place, they'll be healthy and have very few pests in the nucs with them over winter. For all but one of the nucleus colonies that I looked at, they were busy with lots of bees, heavy with food stores, and in fact some were so full of food stores that when I opened them to remove the treatment strips, I split open brace and burr comb between the tops of the brood frames and the bottom of the feeders, spilling honey out all over the frames. The bees will quickly repair these, so it's not a problem, and it shows that they are packing away food in every possible location. Each box was really heavy when I hefted them, and it's a product of the early feeding we gave them. All of the frames now heavy with food. The treatment strips mostly came out with no problem at all. You do have to take care and remove them gently. There is always a risk that bad timing might find the queen, that precious queen, walking over the strip just as you tug at it. And if you're too forceful, it is quite possible to damage the queen by rolling her along the strip as you tug it out. So caution and care are the watchwords here. Otherwise, it's such a simple task and completed in just a couple of minutes start to finish. Work continues over at the workshop. Lots of frames to get boiled and cleaned. These are mostly super frames from several seasons ago actually, that were inadvertently left out in the rain without a roof on them, and well, they've not aged terribly well, to be honest. The comb is a little bit mucky and mouldy, and whilst it could be okay, I would rather clean them out and start again with lovely fresh foundation. It's a quick enough process, to be honest. I think we'll pop them into the steam cleaner and leave the hard work to that machine, rather than try to cut out the wax, render that down separately, and still have to steam clean the super frames. They come out of the steam cleaner pretty much ready to have fresh wax foundation popped into them, although one of my plans this winter calls for the removal of the wires in them. For those of you that are new to beekeeping, all of our frames, be it brood frames or super frames, were previously frame wired rather than foundation wired. What I mean by that is the support wires holding the foundation were fitted and fixed to the frames rather than being embedded in the wax foundation. It's just a different way of doing it. I'm moving away from that setup now because of a couple of reasons. Firstly, the sale of our nucleus colonies requires us to supply them with wired foundation rather than wired frames. It's because we use Thorn Beehive's premium wax and first quality frames. Because of this, it makes perfect sense to move all of our colonies over to the Thorn Beehive's premium wax, wired foundation and first quality brood frames. So should we want to make up nucleus colonies from any of our hives, they are guaranteed to have the correct frames and foundation in them. The super frames are gradually being swapped out too, and are being converted to unwired foundation, again for a very specific reason. We have in previous seasons produced quite a reasonable amount of honey for cut comb and chunk honey. The challenge for me is that every time I produce a little bit more unwired comb for cut comb sections, it always seems to sell out really fast. So by converting everything over to unwired foundation, it gives me the option of producing more cut comb, or if we do need some honey for jars, I could extract it. As long as the bees connect all four sides of the foundation, we can extract unwired foundation in our radial extractor. I've not had very many frames blow out in the extractor because they've been unwired. In fact, most of the frames that have blown have been wired frames that have got some granulated honey in them that I've not noticed. By having more frames available for cut comb, it just gives me options, and currently cut comb is by far the most profitable product we produce. Once the frames cleaning up has been completed, it doesn't really leave me with a great deal to do with our equipment, most of the hives now being full of bees out in the apiaries, exactly how I want it. There's no point just stacking box upon box in the workshop when they should be out there in the apiaries full of bees. I do have a lot of nuke boxes at the workshop though, and these are being prepared for next year. The nuke production process just needs a lot of equipment, an obvious thing to say I guess, but it ain't cheap. The plan is to continue to build on that part of the business, and so far everything is working out quite well. Last week I talked about the microscopes that I'm using and promised to continue detailing the peripheral yet important other items that help make the production of pollen slides, in particular, a doddle. The first thing to say is that if you're going to build a decent amount of microscopy equipment, a tidy method of storing all of the little bits and bobs is essential. I have one of those cantilever type toolboxes, the type that has movable sections in it so you can design the little pockets to suit your own needs. If I were to start again, I might be tempted to go for a little bigger storage system, maybe something like one of those DeWalt Tough System storage towers or Stanley FatMax systems. This is only important, of course, if you're moving things around all the time. Otherwise, one of those workshop trolley drawer systems would be perfect, especially if it has a couple of larger cupboard sections to store the microscopes in. It's a bit like picking beekeeping equipment. Selecting microscopy equipment is very personal, so grab the basics and then begin to select exactly what you need for the type of work that you're doing. So, what do I have in this little toolbox to help me with my pollen slides? Well, here's just a small sample of what we start with. The best thing I ever bought was the pollen kit from Brunel Microscopes. It has pretty much everything you could possibly want to get started in making pollen slides. And pollen slides are probably the simplest form of slide that you can make. It includes watch glasses to prepare the pollen, microscope slides and cover slips, pipettes and the necessary stains and chemicals you need, and a handy booklet describing how to go about collecting pollen and getting it onto a microscope slide to view. Actually, as an aside, if you follow the link in the podcast notes, it will take you to a page on the Brunel Microscopes website that has a set of equipment designed for anyone considering taking the BBKA microscopy assessment, so it's well worth taking a look at. Something I have found really useful right from the start is the dissecting kit. Now that doesn't come with the pollen kit. It's a little cloth roll full of tools that are really helpful when preparing pollen for slides. Although it's called a dissecting kit, it's perfect for plant material, so don't think that you have to go back to school and start dissecting a frog in your biology class. Has anyone else got memories of doing that here in the UK? I'm not sure that I really enjoyed that. Anyway, honestly, to get started, that's all you probably need. It's not that tricky really, and shouldn't have to cost a small fortune either. Of course, as a hobby, there's always something else to buy, some other bit of equipment to add to the collection. It will obviously make the job easier, right? Well, that's what I've always told my wife when a new piece of equipment arrives home with me after another trade show or the spring convention. If you are looking to complete the BBKA assessment, then a ringing table is really helpful. This, by way of explanation, is a small turntable that you can temporarily attach your completed slide to and paint a ring around the cover slip to seal everything inside, and it makes it look really nice too. The fact that you've painted a ring around it means that it seals it so the contents don't dry out. If you're only making up slides on an ad hoc basis in order to identify the contents of your own honey and doing it just for yourself, it's not totally necessary. That said, I have a slide wallet with my original BBKA assessment slides in and some other slides that I've produced, completed in 2010, and they're still perfectly well sealed and viewable. Others that I've made up in more recent times are not sealed and have dried out and are pretty much useless. Talking of the BBKA assessment, here's something of a funny story of my assessment for you. It might give you hope that if I can bumble my way through it, so can you. Oh, before that, books. You really do need books. I'll add a list to the podcast notes, but there are two in particular that I want to mention now, and those are the Anatomy and Dissection of the Honeybee by H.A. Dade, and the second book, The Beekeeping Study Notes by Yates and Yates. This second book is where I found the instructions for producing what was to be the pinnacle of my slide demonstration at my assessment, and me being me, I set myself the most challenging of samples to produce from a slide, well, I think so, and that's honeybee sperm. The instructions are fairly basic but sufficient, but you do have to stain the sperm first in order to be able to view it. Obviously, there's the challenge of obtaining viable honeybee sperm in the first place, but let's skip to my assessment. Anyone out there wanting to give it a try, have a look in the book, and if anyone has successfully produced a slide, I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, the day of my assessment arrived. I was feeling pretty nervous, and I guess we all feel a little nervous when we have these practical assessments, but I do prefer a practical assessment than writing out an essay. So, once it had started, the nerves kind of diminished a little bit, and as I got into the mechanics of using a microscope, it became much easier. So far, so good. So we went through the first part of the assessment, looking at the microscope, and then we came to the inspection of my home-produced slides, showing my skills as a beekeeping microscopist. Pollen slides at the ready. If the assessment is still the same, you have to provide 6 pollen slides, all neatly labelled with various details. No problem at all. As you progress in making up pollen slides, you'll get to identify some without even going to the books. A personal favourite of mine is dandelion. It's such an incredible structure, I think. Anyway, the next section was the dissection and anatomy of the honeybee. The first slide I had made up was a portion of the honeybee trachea. Pretty impressive, even though I say so myself. This was viewed and accepted by the assessor, and we moved on to my final and most impressive slide, honeybee sperm. I set up the slide on the microscope, focused in on the most impressive single sperm I could find, head and tail, neatly framed in the eyepiece. I stepped away and allowed my assessor to sit down and marvel at my perfect slide specimen, to which he said, "Nope, can't see a thing." Talk about crestfallen. He got up and I sat down. I refocused, recentered the sample and stood up again. He sat down once more, looked through the microscope. "Nope, still can't see it," he said. I sat down and checked. It was there, dead centre, in plain view, but each time he tried to see it, apparently it disappeared. In the end, and the moral to this story, in the end, I swapped out the slide for a different slide, a honeybee egg. He had no problem seeing that, and some weeks later I learned that I had passed with, well, let's call it flying colours. What I would say, and as I said, the moral to this story, is have plenty of spare slides available, just in case the assessor is as blind as a bat and can't see what you've made. I still have that slide today. I checked it yesterday, and I believe I can still see honeybee sperm curled up in various portions of the sample. It's not as good as the day that I produced it, but good enough, I think. Maybe I'll make up another one just for fun. More microscopy kit to discuss next week, so listen out for that. But that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now, and if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible. No waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company.